48 minutes. That's how long the average hacker needs nowadays to break out of whatever they initially compromised and move on to more sensitive systems. This is all before most people ever even spot that they're there. This data comes from a new report that just dropped, and I love reports like this. If you've subscribed to my newsletter, you know I love reports with unique data paired with a bunch of really great insights, some visuals, and we can start doing trends year over year. The report that I've been reading this morning and I wanted to share with you guys is put out by Rubrik Zero Labs, and they're calling it the State of Data Security in 2025. They've titled this report a distributed crisis because that's what the numbers seem to point to. We aren't seeing the same old like hack the perimeter, get through the firewall, get your initial foothold into a company. More and more, we're seeing attacks that are just grabbing a set of creds and then getting into your cloud environments and your SaaS environments, which places that I've worked could number in the hundreds of different SaaS tools that you use that people in your organization log into and put sensitive data. So I want to dig into some of the stats that this report say, because that's just like my feeling about things. That's my experience over my last couple of jobs. That's my experience for companies that I advise and help build their security programs. But let's get to some real numbers. But to set the stage, I saw this post just come up on LinkedIn like yesterday that really puts it into words what I've been seeing going on and the trend in a lot of attacks that we're reading about. It's put out by Florian Roth. If you don't know Florian, he's longtime cybersecurity pro. He said, in the past, you had to phish a user, drop malware, escalate privileges, pivot to servers, evade EDR, dump creds, move laterally, exfiltrate quietly, clean up, and leave a back door, describing like a traditional attack chain. Today, all you have to do is phish a user, steal an OAuth token, and access everything everywhere. Cloud breaches aren't hacks, they're logins. I couldn't agree more. Instead of housing a bunch of our data in a bunch of sensitive internal systems with some weird antiquated UIs on top of them for like the internal only web version of blah, 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 everyone has moved to a shinier, better user experience in the cloud and stuck OAuth on all of it. Gated that all with SSO, and then that's one set of creds that once you pop and get that OAuth token, you can get access to hundreds of SaaS environments most of the time. I'm not even talking like giant organizations. Small to medium-sized companies that I've worked with have dozens, if not triple digits of these SaaS tools out there. Every time I've asked someone, hey, how many SaaS products does your company use? They've undershot that guess by double digits. And this report backs up a lot of my experience here. Right off the bat, we're talking page 2 of this report. 90% of IT leaders in this research say that they are managing distributed hybrid environments on-prem and cloud. And because of that, like Florian's post highlights, the attackers have not needed to live by the traditional attack chain. The data right here, this was partnered from a CrowdStrike report that Rubrik pulled. In 2024, malware-free activity accounted for 79% of detections. That's up from 40% of detections in 2019. I'm going to read this directly because I think it words it really well. The broader corporate shift towards cloud infrastructure, identity-driven access, and distributed workforces has forced threat actors to explore new ways to conduct and scale their operations. As threat actors evolve, they increasingly rely on techniques like valid credential abuse. See, cloud attacks aren't hacks, they're logins. Hands-on keyboard intrusions and social engineering, often bypassing traditional malware entirely. And in addition to that, and maybe because of that, they're also getting a lot faster. So this is the stat that I led the video off with. In 2024, the average breakout time fell to 48 minutes, down from 62 minutes in 2023. And this is the average. I think this number is generous. There's got to be a long tail here that's actually dragging this number up, even though we're seeing downward pressure on it. The bar I like to hold security teams that I work with to is 10 minutes. If you could identify and shut down an attack in 10 to 20 minutes, they might still cause you some pain, but you're likely going to disrupt the threat actor's goal. Just due to bandwidth constraints or a lot of other things, they're not going to be able to steal as much data or pivot around or launch their scripts to get into ransomware or anything like that. And as you can see right here, the record fastest in the last year was just 51 seconds that they got from initial compromise to pivoting into a different system. So yes, this means deeper control and successful pivot. Doesn't mean 51 seconds to successful threat actor goal. Here's some stats from their research part of the report. So this isn't from CrowdStrike or their data. They actually had this Wakefield research team go and survey a ton of teams. This is the kind of data I love seeing surfaced, because a lot of times we hear about data from the big companies with big budgets. These researchers are going to catch a lot of different sizes of teams. It gives us a really broad picture of the actual state of the industry. So 90% of IT security leaders say that they experienced a cyber attack in the last year. No surprise here. We're dealing with this stuff every day. 18% of those said they experienced a cyber attack more than 25 times in the past year. This is going to differ on your definition of a cyber attack. Hopefully the bar here is set like above port scan, but probably below like APT. So an actual targeted cyber attack. I could see some organizations surveyed are probably constant targets, so that 25 number doesn't surprise me. Of the IT and security leaders that experienced a successful ransomware attack in 2024, 86% said they paid a ransom to recover their data and stop the attack. This is down 7% from last year, but that's still a gigantic number of people paying into ransomware. 74% of the leaders that experienced a ransomware attack said that the threat actors were able to at least partially harm the backup and recovery options that they had. And 35% of those said that they were completely successful in harming their backup and recovery options. This is one of the ones I wanted to focus on here because backups is one of the main ways to protect against ransomware in general, but also having to pay ransomware. So if ransomware comes in, locks a bunch of machines, encrypts a bunch of data, if you have backups, you should be able to just tell them to buzz off and recover from whatever you have backed up. But a lot of times I'm seeing people have the backups that are accessible via the same means as the production environment. So going back to the whole, hey, they're not even using malware anymore thing, they're just using creds. If the creds they steal to get access to the prod machine to install their ransomware also have access to the backups, your backups are worthless. Your backups need to be physically and logically separate from everything else that's going on. Otherwise, that compromised account can get access to whatever they want. They can nuke the backups as well as prod, and then you're stuck either recovering manually or paying out the ransom. And currently, the FBI's recommendation is never paying the ransom because that doesn't even guarantee that the threat actors are going to help you recover in any way. And a lot of these big ransomware payouts, we're seeing a lot of the people take the money and run. And then other parts of the ransomware crew are left picking up the pieces, and then they'll probably even demand a second payment before decrypting or giving you the key or whatever it is. So FBI says don't do it. They announced that a long time ago, and this report still says that 86% of people that have experienced ransomware attacks are still paying out. One of the other parts of the report I wanted to look into is why is this still so painful? So the researchers surveyed, hey, what parts of this whole thing are still really hard for your organization to track? And here were the top 3 answers. I found this to be very illuminating. Number 1, 35% of the respondents said that securing sensitive data across multiple environments was their number 1 challenge here. 2 was lack of centralized management. And 3 was lack of visibility and control over cloud-based data. So again, this makes sense to me. If you work at an organization that, like I said, has potentially hundreds of different environments between actual cloud environments like AWS, Google, and Azure, and all of the storage buckets associated with those, but then you have things like Dropbox or Box or OneDrive or SharePoint that aren't even associated with your cloud infrastructure, but they are definitely cloud data stores. And then you have a long tail of dozens, probably hundreds, of SaaS tools that are also storing some sort of data. You've got the Workdays and the Ripplings and the Deals and the HR systems of the world. You've got the Salesforces. You've got the HubSpots. You've got the Atlassian, the Jira stack, the Confluence stuff. You've got Slack. You've got GitHub or GitLab. You've got sensitive data everywhere. And if your company didn't build that whole environment with security from the ground up, it's really hard to retrofit, then wrangle all of the identities to all of those different SaaS environments. And the data says it here. This is stuff that people are actually struggling with right now. They don't have centralized management. The data sprawl across multiple environments, and the visibility across all of that stuff is lacking for people. So let's get into what they say we can do about it. What are their recommendations here? So right off the bat, they say securing your sensitive data, you have to map where it is. What kind of sensitive data do you have and where is it? Right here, knowing how much of it you have, where it lives is your first step. So you got to build a map of all those things that I just listed. What are your actual cloud environments, like your S3 buckets of the world? What are all your SaaS environments? A good way to check this SaaS one out, if you don't have SSO gating all your different SaaS environments, go talk to accounting. These SaaS environments are getting paid by you. Figure out what invoices you're getting. Correlate that with identities that you're actually managing. I guarantee there's a delta there. Then they talk about pinpointing where highly sensitive data is. I don't think any surprise here that S3 buckets are filled with sensitive data. OneDrive, SharePoint, these are all things that I listed before. Obviously, people are going to shovel stuff in here that's considered highly sensitive. And a lot of times, like this report says, 65% of all sensitive data is PII. Social security numbers, names, addresses, birthdays. A lot of times this is going to be your customers or your employees, but who knows what your organization is collecting. Obviously, step one is collect as little as possible, but step two here is just know where it is when you do collect it. Then you got to worry about your digital secrets, your API keys, any sort of sensitive IP addresses. If that's like a static thing internally that could be sensitive, you're going to want to know where those things are stored. Your business, your intellectual property, your source code, obviously going to live in things like GitHub or GitLab. But how about your architectural diagrams or the things that are planning what you're going to build and what code you're going to write? Sometimes those are just as sensitive, if not more so, than the code themselves. Then obviously financial information. I like this. So you want to go from we have sensitive data spread across several unknown points with varying security to here's a list of how our sensitive data is being used and how we are protecting it. That'd be the goal. Then they start talking about their recommendations. Again, we just went through like the first, know where it is, build a map. Two, they talk about policies and procedures, and I like this, but I have one big caveat here. Don't just write these policies down, try to enforce them technologically however you can. So if you only want certain people accessing certain pieces of data from certain devices or certain networks, don't just write that as a policy, enforce it, automate it. So great, you wrote the policy, how are you going to enforce it? How are you going to track when it's violated? How are you going to deal with the fallout of the violation? Who's responsible to make sure that all of this happens? Really good call outs, really important. Number three, they say automation is your friend. I couldn't agree more. Anything that's being done manually that can be automated, just do it. You're going to reduce human error. You're going to reduce that whole OAuth spread thing that you're worried about. By automating routine and repetitive tasks, organizations not only reduce errors, but also free up skilled professionals to focus on more strategic and high value security efforts. Couldn't agree more. Backups should be a set it and forget it thing, of course. No one should have to be doing manual backups. They're going to forget. They're going to go on vacation. They're going to get sick. They're going to mess up. So thanks for Rubrik for sponsoring this video and putting out this report. I love reports like this. This helps us keep a pulse on our industry, where things are going, where we're improving, where we're getting worse, where the attackers are improving. Really quick, if you're not familiar, go check out Rubrik. Their whole day job is this whole immutable backup thing. Their bread and butter is this whole instant recovery of your data, securing your data and recovering in case of an incident. That's like one bullet of many things that they offer. I'm going to include a link to this report below. It's over 40 pages long. Go give it a read. Send it around to your team if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Some homework for you out there. If you're in a SOC or if you're on a security team and you're even tangentially involved with incident response, can you beat this 48 minutes to detect initial compromise or detect the pivot and this breakout thing that they call out in their stats? They're saying that's average. If you want to test yourself, that's a good bar to measure yourself against. Like I said, I would be a little bit more aggressive with the bar, but if you're starting out and you want to beat the 48-minute average to detection before the breakout, go ahead and try to set it. Then obviously the other bit of homework from this that I'm gleaning is what's your backup strategy? Do you have a SaaS backup strategy? That's a really interesting question. A lot of people back up their databases. Did you even think to back up some of your SaaS environments? Does your cloud data backup have the same rigor as on-prem data backup? And are all of those things logically and physically separate so that one compromised identity can't get access to both prod, dev data, and your backup data? All right, it'll take you a whole lot less than 48 minutes to hit all those YouTube buttons below. If you like what I'm doing here, hit that subscribe button, tell your mom, follow for more cybersecurity news.